Today is April 29th, 2021. I am Daniel Erickson, and today I'm interviewing Caroline Lowery over Zoom about Oklahoma Humanities and her experiences with the organization as a part of Oklahoma Humanities' 50th anniversary project.
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, so thank you for joining me here today.
Yes, I'm excited. And I have now turned off my beeping robot in the background. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Things like that come up. But yeah, to start off, just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a lifelong Oklahoman. I have a background in the humanities academically. I knew from a pretty early age that I was entranced and romanticized by the humanities. That one senior English teacher will do that to you. Like if you had the pipeline from senior English teacher to getting an advanced degree in the humanities has to be just like a pipeline. So I went to UCO here in Central Oklahoma for my undergraduate degree in humanities. And it was there that I sort of saw the difference between academic facing humanities institutions and public facing humanities institutions. And I knew I wanted to be part of the latter. So after college, a few years after college, I saw that Oklahoma Humanities was hiring a program officer to manage their federal subawards program and their Museum on Main Street Smithsonian traveling exhibit program. And I leapt at the opportunity. I had a former professor up at UCO really encouraged me to apply for that job. And it was my dream job. It was, my favorite work I've ever had. Shortly after, I pursued my master's while working at Oklahoma Humanities. I got my master's at OU through their liberal studies program, and my research focused on sort of the qualitative impact of humanities in American life. And I looked at state humanities councils as well as a couple Smithsonian programs. And it really solidified my love for the humanities and how that could impact Oklahoma specifically. And, as they say, the rest is history. I stayed with the organization. I left for a couple years when my daughter was born, and then came back as executive director about 3 years ago. So it's been, I guess in 2019, 2 years ago, it's been a wonderful journey with not only Oklahoma Humanities, but the humanities in general. I will be a lifelong fan. I will do no other work. This is it. I either don't have a job or I work at Oklahoma Humanities. So.
All right. Yeah. So going forward, could you tell me a bit about your experience growing up and your early education going through high school?
Sure. So growing up, I stayed a lot of the time with my grandmother, who is an Aquarius INTJ and was like notorious for casting a warm light on those she liked and a cold shadow on those she didn't. We were instant best friends. I mean, my grandmother and I got along famously. And she had a lovely house that sat on an acreage, and she had a massive garden, and she loved to garden. And so we would just go outside when I would get home from school, and we would just sit in the sunshine and have the wonderful smell of fresh tomatoes in the Oklahoma summer, drifting over our noses. And we would read books in the sunshine. And it didn't matter if I was in the dirt or if I didn't have anything to say or if I had too much to say. We just got along famously. And she always wanted to be, I think she always lived a life in her mind bigger than the life she lived in person. She was a stay-at-home mom. She had 3 kids. And I think that she felt like her life could have been more than that. So she sort of would talk to me about those things. We would pick books to read that were stories um, bigger than ourselves. We would go to distant places and other worlds when we would read our books together. And she talked to me about other cultures and other places, literally and sort of metaphorically, that you could go in your mind. And let's see, she also loved to cook, but she was terrible at it. So I am a really good baker. I love to bake. So she taught me how to bake, and she never had the patience for it, and she didn't want to do it. And she did not do anything she did not want to do. Um, so we would just bake together, which means I would just bake in her kitchen, and it was lovely. And she was crazy good at those cryptic quotes where you see the different letters and they represent other letters and you have to solve for the quote. She could just look at it and be like, the bear rides at midnight. And you're like, how did you do that? She was really good at that. We always watched Wheel of Fortune and did our crossword puzzles together. We were the best of friends. Um, Beyond that, I have 2 sisters, one older, one younger. I am obviously a middle child. Um, my parents were divorced, and I'm not particularly close to either of them, but they, we stay in touch. Um, my older sister lives in Louisiana, and I visit her as frequently as I can, although with COVID, haven't seen her in almost 2 years. And she is up at LSU, so we both sort of stayed in our academic spheres. And my little sister is formerly a teacher, now an assistant principal. So we all sort of stayed in the realms of learning, lifelong learning, and higher education.
Nice. Yeah. And, previously you mentioned the senior English teacher that had an impact upon you. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Miss Vandergriff. She was just one of those transformational teachers. It's like all English, it's like your senior English teacher. They just get it. They're like, yeah, we know what this can be. She really pushed me. I like to write, I like to read, and I would say I have a talent for writing. It comes easily to me. I never have a blank page. And I think she saw that in me and encouraged me whenever we had writing assignments. She wouldn't let me just take the easy way out. She would have me pick a topic that, say, wasn't on the regular topic list. She would say, I think I would like you to research this. Try writing about that. And she always pushed me to sort of go above and beyond. And it was really challenging, but it was really rewarding to have someone know and care and invest in you and say, I think you're better than that. That is so powerful and so challenging. And it set me up also. Those were like AP classes. So it also set me up to get some college credit, which was, at the time when you're a senior or junior or senior in high school, you might not realize the advantage that gives you. But, I was able to place out of all of my foreign language credits and a lot of those lower level sort of gen ed classes, so that then I was able to focus on sort of my learning path a little bit sooner. And since I had taken those classes with her, I felt much more prepared for my collegiate experience. But she was excellent. She was funny. She was weird. Whenever she would read, prose or poetry or literature to our class, she would like act out the voices. She was like 100 years old. I'm sure she was like 40, you know, in my mind, she was like 100 years old. I'm pretty sure she like only very recently retired. um, but I went to public school here in Oklahoma. So, uh, you know, public school is kind of a mixed bag. I went to a really good public school. Um, as good as a public school in Oklahoma sort of can be. I felt, you know, pretty great about my public school experience. And I felt like she could have taught anywhere. I mean, she was so smart, she was so funny, she was so challenging. And it was also really interesting to see someone in a position of leadership who was not like everyone else. And I have always felt like I was kind of not like everyone else. You know, she was quirky. She was real into medieval stuff. So she would like make her own chainmail and stuff like that. She was just awesome. So she just always encouraged everyone to be themselves. And I feel like when you're going through the transition between late teenage, early adulthood, that is just so rare. And it's just like the special treasure that lets you bloom into the person you could ultimately be. You know, there were no expectations to be a certain way or dress a certain way or say a certain thing. There were no wrong answers. It was a very safe space. And I know that other people felt the same way about her English classes, and they were so hard. I mean, I don't think I've ever had that hard of a class, but it was hard in all the right ways and easy in all the right ways.
Yeah, that sounds great.
I'm gonna have to look up Miss Vandergriff somehow. I don't have Facebook. I'll have to get a Facebook just to look up Miss Vandergriff.
Yeah, but yeah, after you graduated high school, could you tell me about your experience in undergraduate college?
Yes. So I graduated. I actually took a year off. I wasn't able to afford college on my own. So I took a year off and I worked at a few restaurants and a local video rental store. If that doesn't age me, I don't know what those like literally don't even exist anymore. It was called Randy's M&M's Music and Movies. It was just like a local video rental place here in Oklahoma. And I went to UCO. I was able to get like a small scholarship to go there, which was really, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to go to college otherwise. And I had some student loans to help me go to college. And I was able to go to UCO. It was very affordable. Um, you know, that was my main reason for going. It was close to home and it was the cheapest option. So I knew in my heart that I always wanted to go to college and that I had the mental ability to go to college. Um, I was able then to uh, stay in Edmond in Oklahoma, central Oklahoma, and do that. And it was really great. I was at first thinking about a history degree, of course. I still have a minor in history because I had racked up so many credits. But I I just lived in the liberal arts building. It was like the oldest, dampest, gross, just like exactly what you would picture the liberal arts building to be. Um, but I was there for 5 years, and it took me a little bit longer to graduate. I was working pretty much full time while doing at least 15 hours a semester in my coursework. So if I was able to. So I definitely had the experience of, um, you know, working through college, not necessarily participating in like collegiate experiences, you know, on campus life or whatever, sororities or, you know, I didn't do any of that. But I I had two jobs and I would work and go to school, and I loved my professors, and quickly fell in love with the humanities department, and I had a few professors in particular that really um, helped me understand if I wanted to pursue that as a academic track and as a professional track. My Latin teacher from high school ended up moving from our high school to teach at UCO. And so that was a friendly face, Dr. Musgrove. I think she's still there at UCO too. Um, but I I quickly realized that any of the classes I had about culture or people or classes beyond the sort of facts of dates and times and names, I really, really enjoyed. And they didn't, I want to say they came easily for me because I was passionate about them, but that didn't mean that the work was easy. And I really liked that. I really liked the research aspect of it. There's something about doing a deep dive through history that just is exhilarating. You feel like I feel like a detective of the human experience. And I should put that on my business card, detective of the human experience. It's like from I Heart Huckabees, existential detectives. I quickly realized that if there was a way for me to go further with that track, I would like to pursue that. So I also had a couple of professors help me with some master's degree options, writing letters of recommendation and helping me look at different programs. And I didn't do my master's right after college. I did my master's, let's see, probably 5 years after I finished my undergraduate degree, which was hard, going back as a older adult. Most people who are getting their master's, I feel like, they go straight from college. They might be, maybe like 2021. Well, yeah, 21, 22, and then just enter into their master's program. So I felt a little fish out of water because I hadn't been in college for about 5 years. But I had a wonderful undergraduate experience. I loved UCO. I loved all my professors. I still stay in touch with my professors. Now I work with them. They're scholars on our projects and everything else, although a few of them have retired, which makes me sad. But in my junior year of college, they introduced the humanities undergraduate degree. And I was actually the first graduate of that degree program because, again, I had racked up so many humanities credits. They were like, well, goodness, you take 3 more courses, you get a degree in humanities instead of history. And I was like, sold. So that was really great. I really enjoyed my undergraduate experience. It was focused exclusively on learning. Not a lot of college football games or whatever normal people do in college. I don't know, but I shouldn't say normal, but I don't have like a movie college experience. I have like the real life version of a college experience. So but it was wonderful. All of the learning that took place was very. I really enjoyed it. It was challenging but good. Yeah.
All right. And earlier you mentioned that I think it was during your undergraduate degree that you realized the difference between academic and public-facing humanities. What was it about the distinction between those that drove you more towards public humanities?
Well, I think for one, just my personality. I'm a more people-facing person as opposed to, I really enjoy research. I really enjoy writing, but I sort of wanted to see the impacts of that and the effects of that. I don't think I think it was more a personality thing that I sort of exist outside of myself. I've never had an internal thought in my life. So I think for me, it was more just seeing how all the exploration of the human experience is so powerful. And I felt almost resentful that academics were like keeping that to themselves, like that you get to have the transformational experience of learning about people who are not like you. And I just felt like there were the opportunities for real change in public settings if you were able to bridge that gap between the academic humanities and sort of the more, I'll say, like general public, people not in a university environment 40 hours a week. And about that time, I was really thinking about doing my master's degree either in history or in library and informational sciences. And both of those just seemed really academic. And I just, at that point, I thought, okay, when you get an undergraduate degree in a liberal arts field, it's sort of expected that you will pursue an academic career, especially if you like it and you're passionate about it and, you're a good writer and a good researcher. It's like, oh, great, you could get your PhD. And it's like, to what end? I mean, there is very much value in purely academic work. It furthers the field of research. It provides learning opportunities for others, of course, to continue the tradition of academic learning in those disciplines. But for me and my personality, I just felt like I would rather see this play out in the public than see it play out in my own academic career. And there's a local historical society across the street from UCO. It's the Edmond Historical Society. And they're in an old WPA building that has like that clinker style brick, or maybe it's those rough stones, but it's a beautiful building. And I would walk past it every single day when I would walk, when I walked to school. And I thought, like, what a perfect example. They would always have these little historic teas and did genealogical research for you to help you find your ancestors and had all these cool programs and exhibits, traveling exhibits. And I thought, what a good example of how learning about the human experience can happen in a more public facing way. And so that's when I started thinking about how I could get involved with public facing humanities institutions. And the National Endowment for the Humanities is that is the model, the concept for not only academic, but public humanities. It is the way that our government invests in the humanities. And of course, the National Endowment for the Arts invests in the arts. And, when you are in college, you're exposed to those kinds of, larger entities, government, state, federal agencies. And I learned about the NEH and I thought, that's really cool. And then a couple years later, I learned that every state has an affiliate for the NEH and they're the state humanities councils. And I thought, I can't imagine a more perfect fit. I remember thinking that I had a job, I liked my job, and I thought, I'm going to quit my job, aren't I? And I'm going to apply for that other one because that just seemed like exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And I've always said, it's a dream job. I work here or I don't work anywhere else. It's just the perfect combination of my loves and talents. So I don't even remember what your question was. I'm sorry. I got
That's
off
fun.
on tangent.
Yeah. So what did you do after graduating from college?
So after I graduated college, I was still sort of figuring out if I wanted to go into a master's or not. I knew I didn't have the money to do it immediately, so I was sort of figuring that out. And in the meantime, as I mentioned, I love to bake. I worked at a French bakery. It's no longer there, but it was in Midtown, right outside of downtown Oklahoma City. And I was their sort of overnight pastry person. And then I was the manager for when we opened up and people would come in and get their pastries and breads. So I was a bakery manager. And then I also was the director. I ran a food pantry and a free eye clinic in downtown Oklahoma City. And I, after college, I sort of figured out, I always knew I wanted to help people. I always knew I care that my life has impact. That's something that's important for me. And it was just sort of figuring out what that looked like for me. I thought for a minute there I wanted to do like direct social services. And then I realized, that's not the best use of my skills. That's not, I can do that and do it well and it's fine, but it wasn't where my heart was. Um, you know, the sort of social services side of it, I thought it was meaningful and I'm glad I have that experience, but it sort of helped me figure out what I didn't want to do more than it helped me figure out what I did want to do. Um, so yeah, after college, I just was sort of figuring it out job wise, sort of figuring out where I wanted to go. And that was about, let's see, that was like 3 years. Oh, it's telling me my internet's unstable again. I'm sorry. So I did that for about 3 years before I started working at Oklahoma Humanities.
All right. And yeah, could you tell me about, well, actually, were you, before applying for the Oklahoma Humanities position, were you familiar with the organization?
I had seen a Museum on Main Street exhibit. I can't remember where it was, in some little town where I had been, but I didn't realize I didn't know who they were. I was so pleasantly shocked to find out. I mean, it was shocking to me to find out about this organization. I was like, it's like I dreamt up an organization for me to look at. So no, I had been to a program of theirs without knowing it. The program that I would then go on to manage,
Yeah. And then could you tell me
which was
about,
interesting.
yeah. And could you tell me about the application process for the position and what you did whenever you got it?
Well, it was funny. I was managing the food pantry and eye clinic. And like I said, it was fine. I was capable of carrying out those duties efficiently and effectively, but it wasn't where my heart was. And an old professor from UCO, Dr. Mary Broadnax, she had formerly sat on the board of Oklahoma Humanities. And, I think she's German literature and German history. She's very much an academic. Um, and she sent me this job opening and was like, Caroline, you should apply for this job. It's a program officer with the state's affiliate for the NEH. If you need more information, I've sat on the board. I know all about it. Let me know if you need any information. I was like, oh, that's weird. Then I had another friend who was over at Kirkpatrick Family Fund, who is they're a local philanthropic organization. They fund other organizations, a family foundation. And she sent me the job application and she said, hey, we fund this organization. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but I think you'd be really good at this job. And I was like, okay, that is the second random person I haven't talked to in months send me this job application. And then my older sister saw it online as well and was like, Caroline, you have to apply for this. So I had 3 people in the span of like 2 weeks send me this job application. And I was like, oh, it was master's degree preferred. It was, an undergraduate degree in the humanities required, but master's degree preferred. It was, the job description was kind of academic. And I thought, oh, brother, they're going to get someone with a PhD in, American cultural studies or something. I'm way underqualified. And, the classic, I was like, I am a statistic of a woman who doesn't apply for a job because she doesn't think she's qualified for it, even though she is. Like, click me in that little statistics box. And I just had several people encourage me and they're like, no, you really should do that. And I was like, I mean, okay. So I put my name in the hat and I got an interview and I was like, okay. And I just told myself, like, I just want it to be a good fit. If it's, I'm not looking for a job. I have a job that's fine. I'm not looking for a change. The only reason I would take this job is if it was like, wow, that's a great fit. And I went to the interview, and the position was just exactly what I always hoped to do. At least the work was, the mission was, I can put my skills to use, sort of in a myriad of different ways. I liked the program aspect, but like a year into that job, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm going to be here for life. That was it. I fell in love, and it was we used to be in a little office in downtown Oklahoma City called the McAlpine Center. It's right over by the Myriad Gardens. And it was this decrepit building, actually, that John Rex Elementary School uses it now for their after school programs. But it was directly to the south of the old Stage Center building, which was this massive, grotesque concrete theater that was demolished, although I always loved it for its obscurity and uh, absurdity. We were directly south of that Stage Center building, and it was a really wonderful time for me. We were in the same building as we shared a complex with the Oklahoma City Arts Council and the Canterbury Choral Society and the Oklahoma City Philharmonic and Oklahoma Youth Orchestra. We were just in there with a bunch of other arts and culture nonprofits. And it was just like the gang's all here. It was really a great time. It was, I just love the work. I love the work. I love the people. I love everything about it. I love traveling to all the programs across our state. I think one of the most rewarding things about having that job, and then this job as well, the program side and the leadership side, has just been like learning about the place that I grew up in, learning about Oklahoma history and culture. And Oklahoma is just so unique. We have so many different stories. We're just a literal and metaphorical crossroads for so many different people and places and times in history. And it's just fascinating. Oklahoma is such a weird, fascinating place. So that sort of fuels the academic side of what I love, the research, the different cultures, and the diversity in that, while also getting to fulfill my sort of personality preferences of being public facing and my life having impact and meaning. So yeah, I loved it. I was there until I had my daughter in 2016. So I left. I didn't work full time for the council in 2017 and 2018, but I stayed around to do some like contract program and event kind of stuff. I was still kind of hanging out because I knew I wanted to come back at them as soon as I could. My daughter was born with a couple medical conditions that required me to stay home with her, which is what I was not planning on. Never say what you're going to do plan wise before you have kids until you actually have kids, because it's like, nope, that plan's out the window. So I stayed home with her until she was 2, and then I knew that the former executive director was looking to retire. It was a planned transition. She had known for a while that she was going to be retiring in 2019. And so I put my name in the hat for that. And now I'm back.
Yeah. Could you tell me what the process of getting to the executive director position was like?
That was a whirlwind. I'm not sure if it's congressionally mandated or some kind of federal requirement, but I know that most of the state councils do a national search because we are part of a national cohort. You know, every state has its own arts council and humanities councils. And people kind of state hop. You know, an executive director in one state might move and be an executive director in another state, or program staff. And, you know, so I know that that was opened up nationally. That was a nationwide search. And it was like a year-long process. I believe it was, I applied in like November of 2018. So it was a long process. But it was exciting. And I was, I had come to the conclusion that, you know, I thoroughly enjoyed the time I had staying at home with my daughter. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but I knew that I needed something else to occupy, to stimulate me mentally and sort of psychologically. So I had always said, I'm not just going to like take some job. I told the search committee in my interview, I was like, it's this or nothing. I'm not looking for a job. I'm fine where I'm at. I'll always find something to do. I'll volunteer at the historical society. I'll find things to stimulate, you know, that side of my personality. But I was just like, either I'm the perfect person for this or I'm not. You know, I don't want it to be anything other than what's best for the organization. And I truly felt that way, that I wanted them to select who they felt like, who the board and the search committee felt like, and the staff would be the leader that Oklahoma Humanities deserves, because it's an incredible organization doing incredible work. You know, we're in our 50th year. We've granted millions of dollars across the state to other organizations to capacity build in the humanities statewide. The programs, the people, the lives changed is just, I went into it with a very clear understanding of, if they choose someone else, good. That meant they chose who they felt like was truly the best for that. So yeah, it was an interesting process. It was sort of nerve-wracking, but let's see, I submitted my materials. I had to do a public presentation on my humanities philosophy, and I sort of took that opportunity to speak to the impact that the humanities can have. One of my favorite quotes is that the founding legislation of the NEH states that democracy demands wisdom. And I love that. I think that's a perfect summary of the impact of the humanities, you know, that we can have conversations and change lives through them, but they need to be informed conversation, and it needs to be civil discourse, and we need to promote civic engagement. And I just really, I took the opportunity to sort of speak to what I felt the impact for the public who interface with the humanities can be. And you know, some of the other directors nationwide are much more academic than me. I mean, I don't have a PhD in a humanities field, so it's like I have it in my field. It's the equivalent of like having a high school diploma. I mean, it's like you are either, you know, most people who pursue the humanities do it in an academic way. So it's always interesting to sort of see the intersectionality between the academic and the public humanities. And I think that, I mean, that's our congressional mandate. We are the bridge. We are the bridge between the academic facing humanities and everyone else statewide who might not come in contact with a university or their work, or a research scholar or their work. And yeah, I was very much at peace throughout the process, knowing that I just wanted them to select who would be best for their organization. And then I started, and then I have spent more time working from home than I have from our offices because, shortly after I started, well, I mean, about 8 months after I started, the pandemic hit and we had to transition to a remote working experience. And it was just bonkers. I was in DC advocating for uh, for the humanities and for our federal funding at a national advocacy event called Humanities on the Hill. It's all the state humanities councils, the National Humanities Alliance, which is a more academic facing alliance of humanities practitioners and researchers. We were all up in DC and they were closing the airports because of COVID. And we thought, oh God, we're going to be stranded here. We're going to have to try and rent a car and drive home. And we were on one of the last flights out of DC back to Oklahoma City. And our Senator Inhofe was on the plane with us. He was riding a commercial public flight back to Oklahoma City. And I remember really strange things about that day because now I'm looking back and I was in an airport with thousands of people in DC and not a single person in a mask. We were all right next to each other, crammed like sardines in an airport. It seems like some kind of fever dream now. But I remember I had just met earlier the previous day with Inhofe's staff to talk to them about funding for the humanities and more to talk to them about the impact that this federal funding has in Oklahoma. And they're always very receptive to us and always give us tours when we go meet with their staffs in DC, and it's always a lovely visit. And I walked over to him in the airport and I sat down next to him and I said, nice to see you again. Thank you again, for meeting with us yesterday. I'm extroverted to a fault. I'm going to talk to you if you're in an airport. And I remember he was wearing the shiniest pair of, I think, ostrich cowboy boots. They were like the most beautiful cowboy boots I had ever seen. And I just remember sitting there in the airport, thanking him for seeing us. And we were both talking about how we were on the last flight out of Oklahoma City. And I remember he wasn't feeling particularly well. And he was ready to be home. And the next day we got home on like the 12th or the 11th, and our offices shut down the 13th March, Friday the 13th, and 2020. And that was it. That was the last thing I did pre-pandemic, was advocating for the National Endowment for the Humanities and support of the public humanities in front of our elected delegates. And then here we are a year later. Obviously that event did not take place in person this year, but here we are a year later, and I'm still working from home. It's just kind of surreal.
Yeah. And whenever you took the position of executive director, were there any like particular goals or aspirations that you had for the organization?
The NEH has been very focused on federal compliance as of late for like the last 5 to 7 years. And with my grants management background, I managed our federal grants as the program staff. So the grants that our federal funding that we receive directly from the National Endowment for the Humanities, we distribute statewide as these little re-grants or sub-awards. They're called multiple things. And I knew that I wanted the organization to be tip-top shape for its federal compliance and its re-grant standards. I knew that I wanted us to, my goals were all pre-pandemic goals, truly be statewide, reach all 77 counties, which we do with a few programs. But I had lofty aspirations of, traveling statewide and visiting our partners. And I'm sure we'll get around to that eventually. But I would say my goals for the organization were and are to be the best version of what we can be, to do what is not only what is required, but what is best. Um, Oklahoma has a long legacy of grant making and, you know, um, we're always, we're sort of, I don't want to say experts, but we are very our standard. All of our grant reporting and our impact reporting, we take a lot of value in qualitatively and quantitatively narrating the impact of our programs, which not all states have the capacity to do. So we evaluate our programs very rigorously with a Kellogg logic model and other tools, and just to continue that tradition. And then I would just mention my other goal, which remains to be true as well, is just um, the National Endowment for the Humanities was always intended to be a sort of public-private partnership, and that we receive these federal funds, but those should also help catalyze investment in this public humanities infrastructure at the local level. So just in increasing our funding revenue streams through other sources outside of our federal funding, that will always be a goal of the Humanities Council. I mean, we exist as the state's affiliate for the NEH, but we're required to match those funds at least 1-to-1 and show our cost share. And Oklahoma usually matches it about $7 to every $1. So we always do an excellent job of sort of leveraging that federal funding. But I always think there's an opportunity to improve. So I would say those were my main goals, focused on our federal subawards, our outreach to be truly statewide and as inclusive as possible, and then always seeking to diversify our revenue streams. Post-pandemic, who knows? We have a strategic planning session next year, so maybe we'll flesh that out more.
Yeah. As executive director, what sort of work and duties do you do on a sort of like day-to-day basis?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I see my main role as making sure, again, that we are federally compliant, as well as fundraising. So my main duties as far as the federal compliance are concerned would be, filling out any of our reporting requirements, our federal budgets and budget narratives, interim reports for we've had some additional special appropriations this year from the COVID relief packages, as well as we had a special chairman's grant for the winter storms that happened in late February of this year that were devastating for cultural institutions across the state, burst pipes, flooding. Our office was not spared. So we've had some heavy lifts on the federal grant side the last couple of years. So federal compliance has been a little bit heavier than usual this year. And then, of course, fundraising in the time of COVID, that's been a little bit different as well. And then I would just say, ultimately my role is to mentor and manage the people who are responsible for executing our mission. So helping my program staff and communication staff do their jobs to the best of their abilities, and making sure that they are well resourced and on the personal side, happy, healthy human beings. And that has been very difficult in the time of COVID. Daily life is a strange thing right now. Our office had a pipe burst that resulted in flooding in our office from the unprecedented winter storm. I would like to experience some precedented events. But anyway, we have been working from home for a year now. We were just getting back to the office. Staff was vaccinated. We were just going back when we had, the pipe burst, and we won't be able to be back in our offices, I don't think, until like July, probably, with the construction and damage and replacement and all that. So daily life for all my staff is very strange right now. We're not traveling to programs. We're not, I usually have speaking engagements statewide, traveling here and there. We're a statewide organization. We fund things statewide. There's usually not significant travel, but some, at least once or twice a month, you're traveling to some beautiful small town or urban core of our state. So daily life as the executive director the last 2 years has looked more like an emergency response manager than anything else. I had some FEMA training as part of my work being the food pantry director, and I've said numerous times, I'm so happy I had like emergency response training, because there have been several times where I have had to, in the last 2 years, respond to global unprecedented emergency situations, and it takes a certain skill set to be able to do that. But I never mind an emergency. I'm fine with chaos. So honestly, it has just meant that we have had to prioritize our work and get the most important things done, and just know that maybe we have 10 reading and discussion programs for the spring instead of 30. Maybe we have 5 virtual instead of 10 in person. It's just meant being flexible. And I will say my daily work is nothing but an exercise in flexibility and resiliency. I am hoping that will come to an end here soon. I can't wait for the days of just being, going to the office, working 9 to 5. I'm like, what will that be like? I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's been strange times.
Yes.
Yeah, but during your time as executive director, I don't have there been any like favorite or memorable moments that have occurred
I
during
thought
your
you were going
time?
to ask me if there have been any challenges, and I was just going to close down the Zoom screen. Favorite moments, absolutely. There have been a couple. Actually, just a couple weeks ago, I spoke at the OU Symposium for the Tulsa Race Massacre. The centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre is this year. It happened in 1921, when the historic parts of the African American community in Greater Tulsa were razed, level to the ground, burned, destroyed, complete and total devastation. And our board has prioritized funding and resourcing programs that explore that history and that part of our state story. And I was able to speak at the OU Symposium a couple weeks ago, and that was really meaningful. It was very rewarding. As a person who works in the field of history and the humanities, that has been an intentionally silenced part of our state's narrative for 100 years now. And seeing our communities, both academic and public, acknowledge and attempt to reconcile that history has been so meaningful. And I don't think we would be here without the work of local history groups, local humanities councils, people saying, wait a second, this happened. To move forward with reconciliation, we have to acknowledge the past and like work through that. And I just think that's been a long time coming, 100 years to be exact. And it is really rewarding to see the local and national, global attention that that is receiving. And I just think as someone who sort of tries to constantly voice these unheard stories, purposefully silenced stories, it's really rewarding when you see them make their way to sort of the more mainstream. So yeah, I will say my work on the Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commission has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and I will treasure that work and those memories for my whole life. I look forward to the opening of the Greenwood Rising Memorial and Museum Complex later this, actually next month, but later this year. Tulsa is doing some hard work right now, and it's been challenging and rewarding at the same time.
All right. And as executive director, what sort of interactions do you have with the organization's board of trustees?
Oh, well, I am lucky. I have an extremely engaged and knowledgeable board. We are congressionally mandated to have a quarter of our board, which represents 6 individuals, be appointed by our governor. So we're not a state agency, but we're sort of quasi-affiliated with the state since the governor has the authority to appoint a quarter of our board. So a quarter of our board is governor appointed. The other 3/4 are public or academic members. And we have such a wonderful mix. We have some excellent humanities academics on our board, people with PhDs in humanities disciplines that understand the nuances of the humanities and the work. And then we have excellent public members who might be practitioners of the humanities, like lawyers. Jurisprudence is a humanities field. Lawyers or museum directors or historical society supporters or staff members that really see how the humanities plays out in public life. And then our governor appointees are often very civically engaged people who care about making a difference. So, our current governor, Governor Stitt, he just filled his slate of appointees. He's been in office for 2 years. Obviously, he has had more pressing things to do since there's a global pandemic. But he has worked very diligently to fill his slate of appointees, and I could not be more happy with his appointees. We have people from all over the state. He's been very intentional in his geographic diversity in his appointees to our board. We have Tulsa, we have Altus, we have Oklahoma City, we have Guthrie, we have Enid. We have a myriad of people from across the state who care. They serve on these boards as an appointed member because they care about how civics and civic engagement impacts people's life. So then on our publicly elected side, I mean, we have, of course, representatives from all of our major state universities, OU, OSU, OCU, Oklahoma Christian. We have Southwestern, Northwestern, up in Alva. I'm really proud of our board and their diversity. We have our board chair is a member of the Chickasaw Nation. She's an undersecretary there, so we have tribal representation. And I interact with them as they ensure that our organization meets our mission day in and day out. and they understand that mission and they engage in that hard work. And it's very rewarding. I constantly learn from their knowledge and expertise. They, are very 30,000 feet bird's eye view and also very in the weeds. They award our federal funding, our grants. They read those 100-page applications, they pore over them for hours. I really enjoy working with our board. It's an excellent group of very deeply caring and involved individuals. And I think it always has been. I think Oklahoma Humanities has a long tradition of high level, very engaged board members. It's a working board. People don't just serve on our board for the title of it. It is a labor of love, and we are very fortunate to have a long legacy of exemplary board service.